I'd like to thank EveryLife and RDLA for the opportunity to be here, and certainly the Rare Disease Caucus. Appreciate all the work that's been done. But and Cynthia and I have been doing this now for what, 3 years? I think we've been doing this together on this particular act. It's an incredibly important piece of legislation. And where I applaud EveryLife is they came out recently with an economic study that was published, and they looked at the impact of delayed diagnosis. And look, it can take 6 years and 17 different medical interventions after symptoms begin before you actually get a diagnosis. And it also results in over $220,000 of direct medical costs and indirect lost income. Could be as high as $520,000. They looked across 7 rare diseases. So there is a real need from a cost savings perspective for this. Look, when you can get a diagnosis earlier, you can have treatment plans in place that would allow you to avoid many of the symptoms, or at least treat them before they become significantly severe. In our case, we actually were able to get genetic testing done through our commercial insurance in New York City. But in our patient population, more than 65% of patients are unable to get a genetic testing. And here's one of the reasons why it's so important. It spurs innovation within drug development. We've actually identified more than 275 mutations in the COL7A1 gene that can cause a type of dystrophic EB. So when you start thinking about therapies like read-throughs or exon skipping or even gene editing, it's imperative that you know not just that it's a genetic mutation, but what the very specific mutation is. I get questions now all the time: where are hotspots? Which exon has the greatest number of mutations? So it's incredibly important to be able to diagnose that. And especially with precision medicine these days, it's incredibly important. So on top of mitigating costs and spurring more drug development because of diagnosis, it's just, and Kyle brought it up earlier, it's an equity issue. It's a fairness issue to know what you're dealing with. It's already devastating enough when you don't know what's happening. It's important to be able to know specifically what disorder you're living with. One of the other important parts of Precision Medicine Answer for Kids Today Act, it allows the prescribing physician to determine what is the most cost-effective test and how to get to the quickest diagnosis. So it could be a gene panel, cost as little as $250, or it may cost $6,000. But when we're talking about using taxpayer dollars, it's best to be well, I say good is spending your money. So if you can diagnose specifically for $250 and quickly with a gene panel, and a physician says this is the most reliable and it is the best way to diagnose, that's what should be covered. So in earlier versions and in the Senate bill, they were looking at only whole genome screening or whole genome screening, which is incredibly expensive. So if we can knock that cost down and get more patients diagnosed quicker, we're going to be able to show a decrease in healthcare utilization costs. Now, there are right now, we need to make sure that coverage of these screening and diagnostic testing, when it's medically necessary, is covered. So the Precision Medicine Answers for Kids Today Act requires CMS to issue guidance to states on coverage of genetic and genomic testing, whole genome exome sequencing, whole genome sequencing, and gene panels. Again, it will allow for better treatment plans. It will decrease costs and spur innovation. Those are the most important things that I can truly think of when it comes to how important this piece of legislation is. And for one, some of the stuff that we've been funding and we've been working with is now really looking at what is the specific mutation. We are lucky that we had our first gene therapy approved back earlier this summer. And you have to have a diagnosis in order for it to get reimbursed. So even then, to have Medicaid pay for that for the testing would allow a patient to actually receive a gene therapy that is shown to be working and mitigating the symptoms of our disease. So again, I want to thank the EveryLife Foundation for doing the economic study and looking at the costs of delayed diagnosis, and looking at what the costs of those really are. $517,000 is a lot of money. And if you look at it, that's only 7 rare diseases and there's more than 10,000. So if you think that only a certain number, I think it was 379 or 380 diseases that they looked at, about what the cost of rare diseases, they found it to be over $1 trillion in 2019. And that's only a slice of the number of rare diseases. So if you can multiply that by 10 or 20, you can see that what the total cost is to our healthcare system. So again, this is a very important piece of legislation. Please do get in touch with Cynthia and help us get this passed. So thank you very much, and I appreciate the time.